Joining me today are Wade and Kathleen Wiant, Sherry and Corey Foltz, as well as State Senator Stephanie Kunze and Teresa Gavarone. Also here today are Representative Jay Edwards, Representative Michael Sheehy, Representative Haraz Gambari, and former State Representative Dave Greenspan. We also have, I believe, 3 college presidents: President Rodney Rogers, Bowling Green State University; President Hugh Sherman, Ohio University, as well as President John Comerford of Otterbein. In a few moments, I will be signing Senate Bill 126, also known as Collin's Law. Bill is named in memory of Wade and Kathleen's son. He was a promising college freshman from Dublin, Ohio, who died tragically, senselessly, as a result of hazing. He wanted to join a fraternity at Ohio University and be part of a brotherhood. He didn't know that would cost him his life. He died on November 12th, 2018, due to nitrous oxide ingestion. His family was left to mourn, but they turned their grief into something positive, and I want to thank them for doing that. Another college student, Stone Foltz of Delaware County, died tragically on March 7th, 2021, as a result of hazing. At Bowling Green State University, while pledging fraternity, Stone took part in a Big Brother's Night ritual and died of alcohol poisoning. In honor of Stone, the Foltz family joined the Wiant family to raise awareness of and stop the practice of hazing by increasing the penalties through Senate Bill 126. Briefly, this bill, 1, expands the definition of hazing and specifies that hazing may include, and I quote, coercing another to consume alcohol or a drug of abuse, end of quote. 2nd, increases the penalty for hazing to a 2nd-degree misdemeanor, raising it from a 4th-degree misdemeanor to a 2nd-degree misdemeanor. 3, expands the list of officials who are required to report hazing. Next, it widens the scope of those who can be punished for participating in or permitting hazing. A violation that results in serious harm is a 3rd-degree felony. Next, it requires that those aware of hazing report it to authorities, with penalties up to a 1 first-degree misdemeanor for failing to do so. Requires the Ohio Department of Higher Education to implement a statewide anti-hazing plan, and requires staff and volunteers at colleges and universities to undergo training on hazing awareness and prevention. I certainly appreciate the work of Senator Kunze, Gavarone, on this very, very important piece of legislation. And I might note that this bill passed the Senate unanimously. This bill passed the House unanimously. I want to thank the Wiant, the Foltz families, for taking their grief and turning it into something very, very positive, with the goal that no other families will suffer the horrible, horrible tragedy that they have suffered. And I can say, from my wife Fran and my experience, there's nothing worse than losing a child. Before we have the other speakers, just a couple other comments. We simply in Ohio cannot tolerate hazing. And we're saying with this bill that we will not tolerate hazing. This is really a question of culture. And for decades, the culture of hazing has been accepted as something that is tolerated. This bill says that going forward, hazing in the state of Ohio is simply not tolerated. Culture, as we know, is the hardest thing to change. This culture has been around. The culture of hazing has been around for a long, long, long time. But the law can be a teacher. The law expresses the standards by which we expect people to live. The law expresses what is good. The law also can express what we simply do not tolerate. And this law, when I sign it in a moment, will say, we do not tolerate this in the state of Ohio. We can't wait to get serious about this until we lose another child, until we lose another college student. The nature of life is that we sometimes only get serious about things when there is a great, great tragedy. And so we say with this law today that we're not only going to get serious when there's a death, we're going to get serious and say that hazing is wrong when there's no deaths, when everyone wakes up the next morning. That still is wrong. This bill casts a pretty wide net of those who will be responsible for hazing, and for those individuals who participate in hazing, even when no one ultimately dies. Let me now turn to the two families that are impacted, and I'm going to ask them to come up here, the Wiant families, the Fultz families. Then we'll hear from Senator Coonsey and Senator Gavarone.
Thank you, Governor. Governor DeWine, on behalf of my family, we want to express our most sincere thanks to you. For the past 2 years, you have been a staunch supporter of anti-hazing legislation in Ohio. Thanks to your support and the tireless work of Senator Stephanie Coonsey and Senator Teresa Gavarone and former Representative David Greenspan and many, many other legislators, we have passed model legislation in Ohio that the rest of the country can look to in their fight to eradicate hazing. In collaboration with Prosecutor Keller Blackburn, Judd Horse in the North American Interfraternity Conference, Bruce Johnson and the Inter-University Council, we have made Ohio a leader in anti-hazing reform across the country. I'd like to extend thanks to our dear friend Scott Borgamenke for all of his efforts in bringing this law to fruition. I'm also eternally grateful to John Hazley, who has spent countless hours over the past 2 years teaching me, coaching me, and guiding me every step of the way. John, I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you for all you've done, but it's my sincere hope that perhaps someday I'll be able to pay it forward. I'd like to acknowledge Tyler Perino for the courageous testimony he provided in honor of Collin's Law and sharing his horrific hazing incidents that he endured. I'd also like to thank Sherry and Corey Fultz and their family for the heartfelt testimony that they provided for Collin's Law and sharing the story of the hazing death of their sweet son, Stone Fultz. I'm inspired by the incredible work you all are doing in working with the Inter-University Council and the principles that will be across Ohio schools to be another critical step in eradicating hazing. I recognize that we would not have come this far had it not been for the exceptional media coverage that shed light on the dangers of hazing, starting 2 years ago with the work of Tara Morgan and since then many other fine journalists, and especially the Columbus Dispatch and their awe-inspiring team of Sheridan Hendricks, Mike Wagner, and Lucas Sullivan with their production of the Broken Pledge podcast. Through this, they brought to life with great clarity and vivid detail the horrors of hazing in hopes of saving another family from the tragic loss our families experienced. Most importantly, I want to thank my family, Wade, Austin, Olivia, Aiden, and Ava, The relentless support you've given me over the past 2 years gave me the stamina I needed to keep going. I know each of you made sacrifices so I could work on Collin's Law, and yet you never once complained. You only continued to encourage me. You believed in me, and that is all I needed. A few days after Collin died, our family gathered around the kitchen table to write his obituary. The first thing my children said had to be in it was that Collin always stood up for the underdog. Collin was a protector by nature. I can think of no greater way to honor him than a law in his name designed for the sole purpose of protecting others. Collin, I know you're watching, and I hope we made you proud.
Governor DeWine, thank you. Kathleen, Wade, thank you. I want to extend my dearest thanks to all the presidents, everyone that's here today. Senator Coonsey, Senator Gaverum. You know, I was talking to my son earlier, and I said, how do you feel being here? He said, this is crazy. It is crazy. It's only been 4 months. Do I want to be here? No. Obviously, I'd want my son back. But everything that the Wiants have done for this past 2 years has got us here, finally. It's hard. Like I said, it's only been 4 months. But we will continue to fight. Collin's Law is a step in the right direction, but we are not done. We will continue to fight. Our fight is zero tolerance. We will prevent this from happening and having to get to the felony. We will do everything in our power, and I know Stone and Collin are fighting for us and there for us, and that's why we continue to do it. We made a promise to Stone on his hospital bed that we would keep fighting and we would not allow this to happen again to anyone. No parent should have to go through this, any family, and we will put a stop to it. We will continue to fight. We will continue to work with the IUC, President Rogers. We will stop when it is done. We need to eradicate hazing. This can be prevented, and we will continue to fight. Thank you.
I just have a couple quick comments today. I'm so grateful for the Wiant family, for the Foltz family, and for Tyler Perino. I mentioned in my floor speech I was also grateful for the great media coverage that this law has received, and I'm very grateful to be standing here with our chancellor, our governor, our members of the House that have worked on this. Representative Greenspan, thank you very much for your leadership over the past almost 3 years now on this bill. And I believe as much as we celebrate, and I use that word in a very, not in a joyous sort of a way, but we do celebrate the passage of this law. But we also recognize and mourn the incredible loss that has brought us to this point today. It is truly the love of family and the heart of a mother who championed this legislation, why we are standing here today. And Ohioans are grateful, Kathleen, for your unwavering mission to not only change Ohio law, but to truly change a culture on our college campuses for all of our young adults to aspire to have a bright future. The governor kind of mentioned it, but I liken this to beauty for ashes. So thank you.
Thank you very much. What an important and impactful day to see Senate Bill 126, Collin's Law, being signed into law by Governor DeWine. I can't begin to tell you how important this legislation is. I remember last November, I believe it was, listening in Education Committee to then Representative Greenspan and to the Wiant family, and hearing the story of Collin Wiant. And it was shocking and devastating. And unfortunately, we just ran out of time in lame duck. And then this March. You know, there are times when you will never forget where you were when you heard this news. And the news of the death of Stone Foltz is one of those times for me. My son was the same age and is a student at Bowling Green State University as well. I live in Bowling Green. It's my community. And to hear that this happened to another student in Ohio really shook me to my core. And I wanted to do something. I thought about the best person to team up on legislation, and I thought of my good friend Stephanie Kunze. And I'm really proud of the piece of legislation that we were able to get through so quickly. And with the timing of the signing of this legislation, it doesn't go into effect for 90 days, but I know that good Chancellor Gardner has already started working with the universities to make sure that as fall semester starts, we're ready to go. This legislation will save lives, and it's so important. Thank you very much.
So now we'll sign Collin's Law. Everybody good? Well, as you can see by the number of people here, what great support there is for this law. You can also see it by the number of pins here. So we'll get going here. So. Okay, the 6th. We leave 2 for the archives. uh, 8 children to college and number of grandchildren. And when you send a child to college, there's always great apprehension and there's joy, I guess, but also they're moving on with their life, but also a great, great concern. So I think anyone who sends their child to college should expect that hazing is just not part of that experience. And I think that's what really this bill is saying. This is just we're just not tolerating this. And it's not just when someone dies. This bill reaches out and holds people responsible. And if, hazing occurs and there's no permanent injury and it still is a crime. And that's the message we want to get across today. It is truly a zero tolerance. Anybody else?
Governor, how can you make sure that this word and this law gets from a state house today to frat houses on Saturday nights from Toledo to Youngstown?
Well, it's going to take a lot of people to make sure that the word gets out to fraternity houses or any place else where there is hazing, where hazing is part of the culture. I think our college presidents have made it very clear. We are blessed with a number of not only public universities but private universities in the state of Ohio. I think to a person, the men and women who are the presidents of these colleges and these universities who have taken a stand against hazing. It is something that they will continue to drive down through their administration. And it's something that is simply changing, as I said, changing the culture that exists. I mean, when you think about it, hazing has just been accepted. And it's something that after it occurs, as long as no one dies, everyone, people kind of laugh and say, oh, well, that's just the way it is. What we're saying today is that's not just the way it is, and that's not acceptable anymore.
Governor, or to the university heads that are here, this bill obviously goes into effect in October. Students will be back before then. How do you make sure that they're safe when every weekend could bring its own risk leading up to this bill going into effect?
Whoever wants to take it.
One of the things that we have done in the past is that we have a very stringent anti-hazing policy in our university. And that affects not just the fraternities and sororities, but the athletic teams and all of the student organizations. So we just don't tolerate hazing at Ohio University. We've also developed training programs. We've put in place a code of conduct that informs students as to the proper choices they should be making. And we also have developed all kinds of programs for the sorority, all the student leaders, to make sure that they understand that it will not be tolerated.
I might add at Bowling Green, and appreciate the leadership of the governor and the senators and representatives here, but the chancellor even this morning talked about immediately beginning to ensure that each of us at the institutions in Ohio are doing all we can do to do even more education. And so at Bowling Green, we've had a presidential task force this past spring that have been working on a variety of additional recommendations. We've had outside consultants come in and provide some additional advice, looking, of course, at best practices. We felt we were doing a very good job at this historically, and but we need to step it up even more in terms of education. And so beginning this fall, all fraternities, sororities have to go through a commitment plan that includes additional education and training. But I think, and the governor mentioned this, the bringing additional eyes to this issue too, of having responsibility to those that may be aware that hazing is going on, but now there is a absolute responsibility to report that. And so we believe that that will also bring additional structure into the community to make sure that hazing is eradicated. Thank you.
Governor, Sherry Foltz talked about taking next steps. What advice would you give university officials when a Greek organization gets in trouble and there's pressure from someone who used to be in a fraternity or sorority years ago, and they've done well in life and they write checks and give big donations to the universities? How would you what would you advise them? How would you handle those conversations with that pressure?
Well, I try not to advise college presidents on too many things. So, but I think we have a shared commitment to change the culture. What we just signed a moment ago is the law now. It will be in 90 days. But universities also have the ability administratively to take action very, very quickly. And to take it decisively. And I guess my recommendation to the universities in Ohio, and we are blessed with great universities in Ohio, is to take that action. And if hazing is going on, hold those people who are accountable, whether there's been an injury, permanent injury, or whether there's not been a permanent injury. I think decisive action and just literally the goal should be to drive hazing to the ground and not have hazing. And if, fraternity is carrying out hazing, then they should pay, the ultimate price, which is they're kicked off campus, not come back.
To the university presidents, I believe previously the Foltz family has called for zero tolerance policy and removing these organizations until they can prove that they are a benefit to society, rather than reacting when they do get in trouble with hazing. Why not take that action now? Do these organizations bring enough benefits to students that they outweigh the risk of having another family standing up here?
So I'll begin. At Bowling Green, we did expel the fraternity that was a part of this tragic death, was expelled from the campus late spring after we did our investigation. Part of that recommitment plan that I mentioned a few minutes ago includes discussing the benefits and the way in which the community that is built among organizations, and it's not just Greek organizations, but it's all kinds of student organizations and club sports and marching bands, and to make sure that those organizations that are important, a part of the college experience of community, but we focus and make sure that they are committed to the positive aspects of that. So part of our recommitment plan will include documenting the benefits that come from the organization to move our community, our university forward. President Sherman.
Thank you. So one of the things that we've done is we've developed a scorecard of any kind of reported behavior for the different student organizations or fraternities and sororities. So as soon as something is reported, no matter how minor, that group is put on suspension and goes through a serious investigation. We probably have 3 groups right now who are suspended and being investigated. So I think it's that kind of understanding that we can get through to the groups that, it's not going to be tolerated.
How would you handle student organizations who hold events off campus or underground, so to speak?
That's the hardest thing. I agree with your point. I mean, again, it still can be reported, and we will take action against that organization, and they will be suspended for years, right? I mean, if an event of hazing is proven, they're suspended immediately for 4 years.
Governor, in light of
Neil Clark's book, did you accept a $5 million campaign contribution from First Energy in exchange for a nuclear power plant?
No, it's just ridiculous.
Governor, I had a question about a separate bill on SB 52, the wind and solar facilities bill. Your view on that, and will you be signing that soon?
We're looking at all the bills. As you know, we had a flurry of legislative activities. We usually do at the end. That's kind of the way it always works in any legislative body that I've been in or associated with. And, you know, we signed a number of bills last week. We're looking at the remainder, so I'm not going to comment until I've had a chance to go through them. We're in different stages of looking at these different bills.
Governor, quickly for a colleague, why did you decide to send OSHP to Texas? How long will they be there and when will they be back?
You know, when we are requested to send support by another state or by the federal government, it is something that does not occur very often. It's something, when we make that decision, we have to weigh, you know, what detriment it might be to the state of Ohio versus the benefit. So as you recall, Minnesota governor contacted me, actually called me, when they thought there might be some demonstrations around the verdict. We sent out some highway patrol, I think for a period of 4 days. Last October, at the request of the federal government, we sent Ohio National Guard to our southern border. They are still there. A week or so ago, we got another request from the federal government to send additional Ohio National Guard to the southern border. They will be going out later in the fall. I approve that as well. We also received a letter from the governor of Arizona, the governor of Texas, asking for Ohio State Highway Patrol support and help. We analyzed that and made a decision to send a few of our Ohio State Highway Patrol under limited instructions as far as limiting what they could do, but we sent them to Texas. These are all requests that we have received. What happens at the southern border of the United States impacts Ohio. And I can tell you from 8 years as the Attorney General of this state that the vast majority, almost all the drugs that are coming into the state of Ohio come across our southern border. So we have a real interest in securing the southern border. We were asked to play a small part in doing that, and I said yes. I think it's in Ohio's interest to do that. I think it's the right thing to do.
Going back to Collin's Law, if hazing does continue throughout the next semester, will there be any talks about expelling Greek life from the state of Ohio permanently?
Well, this is a decision made at the university level. I think that when you see hazing and when, you know, it continues, it does raise a question that a university has to ask itself: is the benefit of Greek life, does that benefit exceed what's the risk? And I think every university has to make that decision. And I'm not going to tell them what decision that is. But that really is ultimately the question, I think. So we have an opportunity now. This is a new beginning in regard to our quest in Ohio to get rid of hazing. And let's let it play out. Let's see how this goes before we cross the next bridge. Anybody else? Okay, quiet group today. Thank you all very much.